no further ado, Carly James and Ken Bell. So I'm not going to have minutes, but if you do go long, I am going to gently remind you that we would like to make sure that everybody has a chance to speak on every of the topics that I bring up tonight. Try to keep things relevant to the topic that I ask, and we'll see how it goes. Let's go ahead and start with Ken. And first question for you both tonight is, why are you running for Port Commissioner?
Hi, I'm Ken Bell. I'm looking to do another term, and quite frankly, I'm in the middle of a deep, dark thought process about why. The short answer is we made a lot of changes last year at the port, including firing the executive director and putting the 3 to 5 commissioner resolution on the ballot. I know full well why we did it and what needs to be fixed. And so I felt I needed to stay here to see that through. I didn't think it's fair to disrupt the system and disrupt the port and then not be there to follow through on that obligation. And we spent the last 8 years doing nothing but litigating Harcourt. And it would be nice to be able to do something that is not litigation related, but also fix the reason we were in litigation. So the purpose for this run is to fix some of the problems I've identified and make things better.
Carly?
Hi, friends. How's that volume-wise for you? Good? Okay, thumbs up in the back there. My name is Carly James. I am running to give Whatcom County voters a choice in this election. We get to decide whether the port starts working for all of us or just keeps working the way that it always has. So I'm looking to bring fresh leadership to the commission. I want to bring gender diversity to the commission. This is a pivotal time, as Ken has mentioned. We're hiring a new executive director. There's the possible expansion of the commission, and we've regained control of the Bellingham Waterfront. So I want to be a part of the process, the decision making that goes into where we take it from here.
I think just to keep everyone feeling good about themselves, we'll hold the clapping till the end. Would that be okay? That'd be great.
He meant making me feel good about myself.
Ken knows he's in a rough crowd. Second question, let's start with Carly on this one. What skills or assets do you bring to the job?
Yeah, so I'm looking out at some familiar faces. Those of you that know me, I have owned a business in Bellingham, which actually next month is going to be our 21st year in business. It's called Bison Bookbinding and Letterpress. Maybe you come and check this out. We have a shop at the Granary. We have a shop downtown. I'm really leaning into my small business experience. I'm also an accountant. And because of the work that I do, I'm deeply connected to the community, so I bring those strong community connections to the commission. I'm also somebody, I've always run my business downtown, and it's been really important for me to contribute to what makes our community vibrant and unique. So I have a special perspective to bring to the commission that there's a lot of potential for growth and a lot of opportunities for us, and I want to make sure that we do that in a way where we're able to protect what makes us special and unique.
So my history is that of working on waterfronts for a long period of time. You can see I'm not no spring chicken, but I have had a number of companies that have done shipping and have done a lot of maritime work in places around the world. My company specialized in moving commodities in and out of some of the most remote regions of the world. We did cleanup operations in Antarctica. This season, we recently finished a soil cleanup operation for Shell Oil Company on the Arctic Circle. So logistics and moving commodities and moving things in and out of ports has been my life's work. Doing cleanup has been my life's work in some of the most remote places on the planet. As a matter of fact, we're currently
I'm going to throw a curveball at you. You brought up environmental impacts on the port. Can you talk to us about your experience with ABC Recycling, why you thought it might have come to the community, and how it affected you while they were here, and whether you agreed on them leaving or whether you would have liked to see them stay?
Sure, take a shot right out of the gate.
Might as well.
So the ABC recycling debacle, if I would aptly term it, was a port structure problem from the beginning, and I own our part of it. And one of the things that is a mea culpa on that is I'm in this business, I understand the impacts of that, and it just, in the enthusiasm of trying to get work on the waterfront, we let a lot of things slide. The problems identified in this process were the things that the port is siloed, and that those silos need to be broken down in communication interface. The port functioned like a well-oiled machine. The train was on time, the train was on the tracks, the budget was on, we never increased taxes at the port. But it's because everything was done in a very, very secure, coordinated fashion, and information wasn't shared between silos. And the economic development arm of the port overrode the environmental part of the port. And that needs to stop, and it needed to stop, which is why we made some of the changes that we had to make. Is the silos need to be broken down, communication needs to be better between divisions. But more importantly, I think that either mea culpa is we had no idea that was going to be an amphitheater. Right? It's been quiet for 20 years. And the idea that sound might travel uphill never even occurred to me. It was one of those, whoa, why didn't we think of that moments? So from the ABC recycling lessons, I regret the way it came about. I will say it's a mixed bag. I would not do it again. It is not a lesson I want to learn over again. The mixed bag is it put Bellingham on the map with the maritime community and with people that understood that the shipping terminal was finally open. Nobody knew the shipping terminal was open. And boy, did we let the world know in a loud way, no pun intended. But it brought the commodities we have here today into the shipping terminal. But at the moment, we were so exuberant to have commerce and to put our laborers back to work that we just let our economic development arm override the public outreach arm and override the information between silos arm. It took a major change at the port to break those silos down, and it took a major change at the port to exchange information and start to do a better public outreach. So made a very tough decision to make those changes, but at the moment it was just an exuberance, and I wouldn't do it again. I'm looking at you two, not just him. He just happened to be the face of it.
Can I say a few things about
Please.
this topic?
Yes.
Obviously, I wasn't involved at the time, and just when I joined this race, I didn't know Ken. In the last several months, I've gotten to know him as a kind and thoughtful person, and I believe him when he talks about the lessons learned, that he's taking that to heart. There's a couple things that he mentioned, the train analogy. I think that what's missing is inviting the community on board, and I think that the ABC decision reflects a decision that didn't put our values and interests in the forefront. And just to speak to putting us on the map, I think it put us on the map for the wrong reasons. I think that we have a port and a business community that maybe seems unstable, litigious, chaotic. So there's work to do to repair that reputation that we've created.
We'll return back to the shipping terminal later in the questions, but for now, let's stay broad. What is your overall vision for the future of the Port of Bellingham, and what are your top priorities if elected?
Should I go first? Okay. Okay. Okay.
By the way, you and we have a great relationship.
Ken's my buddy, so
It's been an amazing campaign.
this is the way campaigns should be. Ken Kevin's been doing this work for 8 years, and I would be very short-sighted to think that I have nothing to learn from him. So I'm very grateful for the time he spent talking to me, telling me about his experience. It's what's made this process as enjoyable as it has been. So my overall vision for the port is for the port to simply have a vision. I think that right now we don't have an executive director. We don't have a strategy for the downtown waterfront redevelopment. And I think that that is rippling out on the quality of decisions that we're seeing come out of the Port Commission. And if you want an example, I would encourage you to go on YouTube and watch the commission meeting from last night. There were topics that were discussed. One of them was from the Tune-Up Festival and the future of what that looks like on the waterfront. The other one was the board mill building and how we've had to evolve the expectations for what that project is going to be. And you will see commissioners trying to make decisions on our behalf without knowing what is best for all of us. And so I want to come in, first order of business is to make sure that we have a vision and that you all are a part of that and that the Port Commission is responsive to your input. Was that the full question?
What is the overall vision for the future of the Port of Bellingham, and what are your top priorities?
Okay,
So thanks for taking the shot. Now it's time.
okay. All right. Top priorities, communication and transparency. I'm somebody who enjoys talking on a microphone and I enjoy talking to the public. I'm incredibly accessible. You can come see me at my shop. And I want to be a port commissioner that's doing the extra work of making sure that you know why I made the decisions that I've made. So yeah, re-engaging with you and really to repair the broken trust. The other thing that's a top priority for me is getting moving ASAP on stakeholder engagement for the waterfront redevelopment. The Harcourt settlement agreement happened in May, and I don't know why we haven't started sitting down at the table with community members to decide where we're going to go from here. And I think that part of that, just so you know, part of this is going to be a hard conversation because what's happening down on the waterfront is largely temporary uses that now as the years have gone by, we've become attached. And so we're going to have a hard conversation about what we want this to look like and where we want those amenities to move, because I think that they've shown to be part of our heart. So how can we really realize the full potential of our waterfront and keep those?
So I'll start with the answer to the question first, and then respond to a couple of things. First thing is, the vision is just that. We were lacking the vision, which is one of the reasons we were getting a new executive director. Communication was difficult, but the vision really came to light for me when we were looking at developing our airport industrial park with, and forgive me, I've not received more mail since the ABC experience than I did by saying what I'm about to say, but we went to put a pickleball court on the airport industrial park. Me believing that pickleball is not necessarily what needs to go on an airport industrial park. It is a free trade zone that has industrial ground that should have been developed. It was glaringly clear to me that we did not have a vision. We did not have a plan for the airport industrial park. Nothing against you pickleballers. I know it's a religion, but it didn't belong there. And so it started with, why are we doing this? Why are we putting a 50-year lease for a pickleball court? It's not going to bring work to our waterfront. That started to erode faith in our vision for a lot of areas. My vision, first and foremost, is for economic growth. It is for economic growth at the airport. That's my number 2 priority. That airport is so underutilized. It's been 40 years since we built it, and you can drive along Mitchell Way and see lots on both sides of the road that need building and need infrastructure and free trade zone. We have an airport right out your door. The airport needs to be bringing work, which is the purpose of the port. The first priority, though, for me is the shipping terminal. There is no greater asset to this county than access to the water. You can't bring goods from China into Topeka, Kansas, the way you can in Bellingham. So the priority needs to be, how do we bring working wage jobs into the community? And I do it for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that I'm really tired of trying to subsidize our way out of the housing crisis when we need to be employing our way out of the housing crisis. You bring working wage jobs, you bring union jobs from the locals into this community, and you will have people who can afford to buy their own houses. That's what we need to be focused on. Our shipping terminal needs to be shipping goods, we need to be employing people. Number one priority. Number two is doing the same thing at the airport. The other assets of the airport, we're not going to have, we can't depend on Canada to be our engine for the airport. That has been a fool's errand. The traffic has been up and down. It's time the port took a look at using areas, maybe Fairhaven or somewhere, to bring in tourism, to bring in cruise lines, or bring in something that would bring people to the airport. The only way that airport becomes the airport we want it to be is for us to create our own demand. We have lived and died by the Canadian dollar, by the demands of Canada. That can no longer be the case. We have to be able to ask airlines to come here on our own merit. You want Southwest to stay when they come in, or you want an American airline to come, or a Delta? You have to create demand from here. So number one, shipping terminal. Number two, the airport development park. Number three is bring that airport to full vitality by creating demand here, rather than depending upon the Canadian dollar and Canadian traffic to make our airport go.
So it seems like we're on the topic of economic development, as that is the mission of the port. How do you plan to balance the port's economic development goals, community interests, and environmental stewardship?
Okay. Yeah, that's, first of all, we don't have enough work, and so work is our job. We have to live and die by the regulations that are there. Like I said, I do cleanup for a living, and quite frankly, should have known better with ABC, and we need to keep our stormwater processes in place and in investments. And I think that comes through our budget process, which we begin tomorrow, and setting our priorities in our budget to make sure that we've protected the waterway, because once you've polluted it, it does not come back easily, as we have seen. The GP site took $125 million to clean up, to get it back to the place where we could at least just have a field where people could congregate. That's $125 million that we don't have. And quite frankly, the environmental balance of that was overlooked through that process. It has not been overlooked since. And right now, when we look at shipping out of the shipping terminal, it won't be done the way it was done. We are looking at something called a rotainer. Look it up, R-O-T-A-I-N-E-R, trademark. But it is literally going to take commodities from the areas where they're being shipped, and they will drive them down on a big container that turns upside down inside the boat, so the noise level will be minimized. Because the only thing you're going to hear are containers being moved around on a forklift over to a boat, taken up by a crane, and then dumped in. And we will move commodities by transporting them in a more environmentally safe way, and in a quieter way, and in a less impactful way. We need a rail spur to get those into that area, because the number of jobs that will create for our longshoremen will be off the chart. Just so that you know, when BBC was running, our longshoremen were making $65,000 a day. I mean, we had $65,000 a day in payroll, and we don't want to give that away. So we've got to keep it busy. We've got to keep it active. The more jobs you have on the waterfront, the more ideas like that that come to the table, the more we're going to utilize them. That's going to be the way we produce the impact.
So the question about balancing economic development, environmental stewardship, community interests, I think that, when I hear the word balance, there's an implication of trade-offs and compromise. And we're all adults, we all know the importance of compromise. I just don't want it to be So, finishing the cleanups, a lot of questions that I have talking to voters is, why isn't the cleanup finished? Where are we at with it? And I think that there's also a lot of feelings of disappointment that we let GP walk away leaving such a mess behind. So, that was like a massive transfer of, a burden that the corporation that polluted our bay should have been held responsible to clean it up. That has been transferred over to us as taxpayers to foot the bill for that. So I want to make sure that we get the cleanups right, we get them done. I want to make sure that we're designing industrial areas that Ken's talking about, buffer zones, stormwater management. There's a lot of things that I'm learning that are available to us. We just need to make sure that the port is prioritizing those things because they're prioritizing the community first.
I'm gonna start by correcting the record. The GP did not get off the hook. The $125 million, none of that came from you. $50 million was put into a fund by GP to help to clean up that waterfront. Plus, there was a $50 million insurance policy that GP was required to take out that paid for another $100 million of that. We had a little bit more to finish. GP is going to pay for the remainder of that. They have never walked away. They have always supported us. We bought that land as the port for $1 with them in tow. So by the time they are done with this, there will be at least $130 million out of the GP coffers to pay for that cleanup. The idea that they walk away is not an accurate statement. They didn't just come here, pull it and run away and we took it over. They have remained on the hook. We had meetings with them as late as last month on what their portion was going to be for the remainder of what is prepared to be cleaned up, and they have agreed to pay it. So it is not a true statement to say that this Port Commission ever let anybody off the hook for pollution. Every time we see a polluted piece of property, we go to insurance policies. We go to the insurance policies first. And most of the cleanups that we have been paid by that. But I will tell you the big villain in this, quite frankly, is the state. We have tax money that you pay into your gas tax, into the refinery taxes, that goes into a fund called MODCAP. MODCAP cleanup money is designed to clean up model toxic Nicola is the name. It goes to pay for cleanup operations. The state pays back the port for cleanup operations they do by money that you're taxed. Last year, the state took $50 million of MODCAP money into the general fund. Can you imagine what we could do with $50 million? We could be done with most of these. This year, the state legislature took $70 million of MODCAP money. Can you imagine what I could do with 70 plus 50 over a 2-year period to finish the cleanup on the waterfront? But that MODCAP money wasn't given to us. It was seen as a pool of money that wasn't necessary at the time, and it was swept into the general fund. And I screamed this from the mountaintops. Those of you that been to my meetings know that this is my pet peeve. Money the state said was going to go to help us clean up. We are the most needy. We have had the biggest problems here in Washington County. Our industries have done more, but the state has taken the money designated to us. Doesn't necessarily fit their timeline. You do clean up, this is for bureaucratic reasons too. It takes you 5 years to get a permit to go in to dredge a waterway. And they say, well, they're not going to do that for 5 years. But when we need it, we need it. We need it. And yet it's been swept away from the state, by the state. So from the environmental standpoint, that's the villain of this. We could have easily done more if we had had that money in our coffers. And I wish we had. The other side of this, the other lesson that was learned, is we do need those buffers. And Carla's absolutely right. If we can do a transition from heavy industrial into light industrial into residential, and then this is not a popular statement, but I say it anyway. We've had a problem, not because we have been doing industry too close to housing. The problem is that we've had industrial ground that has allowed housing so close to industrial ground that the people can't work. And then we ask why we don't have jobs, and why we don't have the old school jobs, and why we don't have the trades. It's because we have encroached on those areas. We just did an industrial land study, we need more of it, clearly. Sorry, I rambled, so.
You did. I had to
I was
find
about
a
to cut
way.
you off there, Ken.
You can.
So, you brought up a topic that I dealt with during the metal shredder time, that we did have industrial land butting up against residential. The port supported the shredder and the industrial land. You have property out there that is zoned heavy industrial. You talked about old jobs, old school jobs, and new school jobs have been discussed too tonight. Do you see the future of the port bringing back old school jobs, or do you see the future of the port bringing in new school jobs, or once again, is there a balance?
I think that it's a mix. The industries that we're bringing in today are not the same as they were. The commodities we're bringing in today are not the same as they were. We have cordless energy now on our waterfront that brings in batteries. We would never have expected that years ago. We are never going to go back to the logging and the things that made Bellingham big. We're not going to go back to the chlorine-drenched toilet paper factories on the waterfront. But there are certain things that are going to have to come through the port. One thing that we are learning is that the trades are making a resurgence. And what we do know is that there is a huge trickle down from when you bring boats in and when you bring commodities in that have spread throughout the community. You have truckers, you have repairs, you have all of the flow down economies that come from that. So I think it's a mix. I don't for a second think that we're going to escape some of the heavy industrial stuff that needs to occur because there aren't many places to do it. But I take a look at a place like Janet down in Skagit County, which is doing SpaceX stuff, which is doing stuff for Microsoft. And it was the first question that came to mind when I looked at the airport and said, you know, if you've got Janet putting in 185,000 square foot industrial park to do next generation stuff, satellites in the air, doing stuff with Microsoft, doing stuff with space age things that need to happen here. You also have Boeing doing 44,000 new planes in the next 20 years. If Boeing is going to manufacture 40,000 planes with a new wing design in the next 20 years, and they're going to have 120,000 subcontractors, give me 10% of those, and we'll put them at the airport. Those are the kind of things that I think, from an economic development standpoint, need to be fixed. And in the last 2 years, we have brought on a new economic development director, getting a new executive director. But the sole purpose of that is to go look for those things that are the future. And quite frankly, Boeing is a great future and should be in their pocket. Seattle is looking for another runway somewhere else. We're 2 hours away. They're looking at going over the mountain. They're looking to go to Portland for those flights. We need to be in their door. We need to be in their business and saying, why aren't we your consideration? Why aren't we Boeing on your radar screen? You're shipping parts in from Kansas City. We're 2 hours up the road. So that's the real question for me from an economic development standpoint. How do we work well with energy? How do we work well with the airlines? And how do we work well with technology changing the paradigm? Yeah.
Sure.
Thanks, Ken. Yes, thank you for a moment. I think that there's a reason why Boeing isn't knocking on our door, and there's a reason why we have what some people call the most valuable land on the west coast of America sitting idle. We don't have developers knocking our door down, and it's because we don't have stable leadership at the port. So again, just bringing it back to leadership and vision, that's what I want to bring into the Port Commission. I'm somebody who sort of straddles the world of old school jobs and new school jobs. I have a vintage printing press. I'm using equipment from the late 1800s through the 1960s, and we've made it possible because of new technologies. So those are the things that really spark for me. And I know that Bellingham is an innovative place with a lot lifeguards. And the work that they're doing there is incredible. They are changing the way that commercial fishing is being done by being more nimble. It's incredibly fascinating and brings a lot of value to our community. So I think that there's long walk to my answer here. I think that there is a way to keep the spirit of what we're calling old school jobs, which basically means jobs that you can do with your hands. Jobs that, you grow up in Bellingham and you want to stay in Bellingham, there are jobs here for you, there's work here for you to do. And I think that combining that spirit with innovation, we have a lot of opportunity moving forward.
Before I let you go and challenge, we brought North Lyon. We made room for North Lyon. There was not a lack of leadership in bringing North Lyon. And they are the future. They're reimagining the way fishing is done. They actually go out to the sea and take the fish fresh out of the fisherman's boat, put it into their freezer. We had to make a way for them to come here. We've done the same thing with our farming community by keeping Boxberry Farm in agricultural zoning. It was up for sale, could have easily gone to housing. We're on the forefront of it, that stays there. And we put an agricultural research center on that property, leased it out to a nonprofit working with Washington State that will pay the rent, and it really pays that back. So from an innovation standpoint, it's really easy to look for things where we didn't do something well. And the Waterfront, by the way, took 7 years longer than I thought. When I first ran, we were going to be done with Harcourt in 2 years, and we were going to be off and running. That litigation, because of the way the contract was drawn, took 7 years. It wasn't until May we got it done. In May, you saw us complete that contract. You saw us fired, I guess, for a better term, executive director. So changes needed to be made. It was clear we had a new opportunity. We needed a fresh look. We needed a fresh face. We also needed a fresh way of doing business. And so that's what we're in the process of doing. But the innovation that we've done before, not only have we done cleanup, not only have we brought in some innovative technologies, the future of technology is just what North Lyon is doing. It's also what the airlines are doing with their new technology. It's also what Corvus is doing with batteries, which we also brought in. So the economic development of the port has not been from a lack of vision. While the waterfront has been going through litigation, we haven't been just sitting on our hands waiting for the opportunity to come. We have actually been out there searching. We've got a longer-term lease with Bellingham Cold Storage, which is going to keep them producing jobs. But the new economy is a mix of both old and new. So the new jobs are going to be things like those new technologies, but it requires technical expertise. And it requires some old school shop class type learning in order to get those jobs across. We had a meeting today with the Navy. The Navy is here because they have boats, they have ships that go on the water. And they're saying, we're going to your communities because we need people. We need people trained in the trades. We need people who know how to do the mechanics. We need people who know how to do the painting. We need people who know how to do the maintenance. We need the chefs. We need the cooks. We need the people who know maritime. So how do we reach your community, because you're in the maritime community, to help us feed the loop that we need at the U.S. Navy? And so an amazing conversation about how we can keep both in our community, but there is a need for both.
Let's keep responses to a minimum. Carly, would you like to respond to that before we move on?
Wonderful.
I want to make sure that both of you have an equal chance. It takes away from the first. Go ahead.
I think we can just move on. I mean, Ken's been doing this job for 8 years. He knows all the ins and outs of every conversation and everything that's happening at the port right now. I'm stepping in here for the first time, so I'm not going to be able to rattle off the list of achievements. And there are plenty. I'm not up here just throwing shade.
That's fine, no problem.
Yeah.
Let's move on to, we've talked a lot about industrial. The waterfront is top of mind for a lot of the community members. What do you see for your vision of the waterfront specifically that's north of the industrial zone? The waterfront that has the condos, that has the possibly hotels, where the pump track is currently, all of that more commercial and residential area. We have a sub-area plan with the city of Bellingham. It is a 50,000-foot view. What do you see the waterfront in the next 10, 20, 30 years?
So I'm on the waterfront almost every day at that site at my shop at the Granary, and I get to talk with folks, and sort of dream about what we want to see there. So visitor mortgage, roads from downtown to the waterfront, not just this Bay Street connector that's gonna, require walking down steps, expanding commercial streets, so that we have more than one road going into the area. Clear wayfinding, safe pedestrian routes, more bicycle parking, smart and innovative car parking with charging stations, and most importantly, what we need down there is year-round activity. It's so harmful to the businesses at the Granary and to the businesses downtown that we only have this partial year activity going on down there. Personally, the things that I'm really excited to bring down there that I would love to consider are a performing arts center, presence for our tribes, a maritime museum, and making sure that we're finding the right mix of businesses, like Ken said, retail, food, service, recreation, maritime trades, striking a line so that we have the right mix of things down there. And I think with stable leadership, we can work together to peacefully and productively realize that vision.
So part of this too began in May with the change in leadership was there was a disconnect on some of the vision. And right now, we were doing the downtown waterfront kind of the same way we were doing the airport. We would take a parcel and we would put it out and say, bid on this, give us what you want to see there. Parcel by parcel, which is not congruous. It does not have any kind of a cohesive structure. And what is needed down there is for us to take a look at what we do as a common area, because what we've learned over this interim period, and by the way, it was an interim period for the pump track. And I made a point last night of reaffirming that it is a temporary fix, the pump track. That area deserves to be much greater. And the first thing I will tell you is the vision that comes from me is a place in downtown Denver called McGregor Square. If you can write that down and take a look at it, what it has in the center of McGregor Square is a huge gathering area right outside of Rockland Stadium. And around it is the most amazing array of shops and activity, condos, and hotels, and a downtown center that brings people in there, even when the snow was 3 feet high. We're watching movies on a huge screen with the top. It brought home that you take the common area that you need for gathering, and you make it the epicenter of whatever you do down there. This is going to require us to talk to the city and to say, city, you've got a park that goes through there. Let's figure out how we can make this what the community is telling us it wants. It wants a place to gather. It wants a place to call home. It wants a downtown core. And you build around that first. But you create that center. The container village came out of just that. I was in Christchurch, New Zealand, and they had an earthquake, and the entire downtown was completely devastated. The way they got the town back on its feet was to put containers out there. It was a great way for them to bring commerce back into a city that was completely devastated. So we said, hey, we've got a waterfront down here we can't use for a few years. Let's put a container village down there like they did in Christchurch, and let's bring the commerce here. And you can see the activity that we got and what it generated. Now, that is not the full-time focus, but it did illustrate to us that not only can we put big-time entertainment on a stage in the middle of a downtown core where people gather, but that needs to be the epicenter of what happens in that area, surrounded by something of that nature. My other story, you're looking at me like I may be over.
No?
The other story, and I happily wear a watch from here, is from a company called Shinola. For those of you old enough to know, there's the saying about Shinola. But it used to be a shoe polish factory in downtown Detroit. Completely vacant, completely skid row. Shinola is now one of the highest end watchmakers, leather makers, because they redeveloped it with vision. It is in part of the Detroit downtown core. And I was on an airplane once and I walked by somebody and they looked at me and said, it has the opportunity to be the proper, right? Don't you? Michael knows my sense of humor. You know my sense of humor, so I'm right there with you, man. But we have the opportunity to redevelop this area in a way that has that kind of vision. I didn't see that vision coming from the current leadership. I thought we needed to make change. And quite frankly, that's the vision I've been painting everywhere I go. And there are people in this room that have been here many times and heard it way too often. Right? That's it.
Let's continue that thought with the next question. The Port of Bellingham has faced criticism regarding its communication with the public. What steps would you take to improve transparency and engagement with the community?
Rightfully deserved. We were horrible. We had our head down and we did not communicate. Guilty, that's correct. We have taken steps over the last years to fix that. Now you're seeing a number of different public forums where we are actually going out to the public, holding public forums within facilities. We're even going that far with our executive director search. We've hired a firm that's going to go seek out other opinions other than our own. The port tended to be in a bubble. A lot of that was the leadership at the top. We didn't have an expansive view. That is going to change. First and foremost, the communication from the stakeholders and the communities is already increased. This next week we have a meeting down at Perry to talk about what's going to happen at the Perry Industrial Park. We've had one at the airport. We've had one in Blaine. We're going to do one for the waterfront. That's going to include the mayor. It's going to include the city council. It's going to include all of the stakeholders in the city to give us the input that needs to be given and not be a dictatorial body. The communication between governmental bodies has been horrible. And I think our city council members would agree to that we have not been very good communicators. We have now put a program in place where we've got now a dozen of these kind of community forums that are going to go out throughout the community to get input and to talk it through. I think one of the things that we're going to talk about later is going to do 3 to 5. I'll wait for that.
Okay.
But that stems from some of this.
So what I want to do as port commissioner is be the most accessible port commissioner. Like I said, you can come down and talk to me at my shop. I'm there multiple days of the week. I also want to make sure that every decision I make as port commissioner, you know why I made that. So I envision doing some sort of newsletter or email updates to keep everyone current on my thinking of things. But yeah, Kevin's saying they're doing a better job. I think that we just have to ask ourselves if they are, and if that's sufficient. And if we can trust them to keep moving in that direction, or if it's going to take a change in leadership to make sure that we're seeing the level of transparency and accountability and outreach from the Port of Bellingham that we know that we as the community of Whatcom County we deserve.
Ken brought up the 3 to 5 is what he mentioned. The 3 to 5 is that right now there's 3 port commissioners, and that means that due to public meeting laws, no 2 commissioners can actually speak over coffee and talk about the future of the port because it's a public meeting, because there's a quorum. And so what the community has pushed for, Michael Shepard has pushed for, Ken Bell finally voted for, was that we actually put it on the ballot for the community to vote on to raise the Port Commission numbers from 3 to 5 in November. It's a healthy way of doing government. It just makes sense.
What are you running for?
I'm not running for anything.
Is there a question in there?
Yep, just informing the public about what the 3 to 5 is, because I believe it's actually something that we should actually have and we should vote yes for. So I'm putting that little 2 cents in. What is your position on the expansion, and how do you believe it would impact the port's effectiveness and accountability?
So I am for expanding the Port Commission. I encourage everybody to vote for it. I think that when you have a history of disregarding the input of the community and you don't make a seat for them at the table, they are going to elbow their way up to the table, and that's what's happening right now. So yes, more diversity of thought, more diversity of perspective, more diversity of age, more diversity of gender. These are the things that are gonna take us into the future. And I think that we can all appreciate that Ken has finally decided that he supports this idea. If it were me, it's something I would have brought to the table much sooner.
You got it. You're gonna take a shot. Just letting you know that I'm keeping
Thank
score.
you.
So the issue of 3 to 5 came to light during this last go around. Really came to light. Thank you, Scott. That's double-edged sword here. ABC brought to light a lot of our deficiencies. And quite frankly, the scrutiny that the SK has been giving us has been incredibly helpful in making us open our eyes to see where our shortcomings have been. So to all of those, there is a debt of gratitude that needs to be. But as soon as I started to really look into this, and just so you know, the court commissioner's part-time job, the most you can make in any given year is $17,000. You can make $100 for every meeting, $150 for every meeting. This is not a job that you get paid, nor is it a job that's expected to be full-time. So I have a full-time job, and my job takes me to remote locations. So when I'm done with a meeting on a Tuesday, on Wednesday morning, I'm back up in Garlic, working on projects that are there or over in Canada, right? So your headspace goes away from what it is. So you need a good communication link with the mothership. What was lacking, and you can imagine, especially if you have problems with the executive director, and you can't talk to another commissioner, you have to go through the executive director. So imagine telling the executive director, hey, I'm really not happy with you. Would you mind going and telling Michael? Or would you go over and tell Bobby why I think this needs to be? Or if you're not on the same page, let's say you've got a different vision for the waterfront, and you say, this is my vision, can you go communicate my vision? It can't be done through a third party. This commission, I guarantee you, is the first commission that ever lived by the rules that were established by the state, that 2 commissioners cannot talk. I promise you, every commission before us violated that law. I have talked to previous commissioners. I even had one say, hey, yeah, we go to a convention and we get the same car. We're free. No, you're not. Under the law, you can't do that. And so they got around this and they communicated because they talked to each other, which is a violation. But this commission has been steadfast. We don't travel in the same circles. We don't have an occasion to see each other. We don't communicate. And it brought up this problem it became more evident than ever. If I can't sit down with Michael and have a conversation with Michael about something and have him convince me, and I will tell you, you helped me see some of this. We sat down the other day after a decision support meeting, and we had a disagreement. But we sat down and we talked about it, right? And we talked about it at a peer-to-peer level. That has to happen on the commission. We have to be able to have a conversation with somebody and say, hey, Bobby, I know you're pissed at me, but let's talk it through. Instead of trying to go through an executive director who sometimes might have an interest in stoking that, right? So the 3-commission structure is fundamentally flawed. And the 3-commission structure kept the information silos the way the executive director established it. So if he set a silo here for environmental, it went through him. All the environmental people talked to him before they talked to us. We're breaking those barriers down. And it took a bad time for us to make that change, but that's what's in process. And by having 5 commissioners, we can at least have 2 people talk to each other, have a conversation, but more importantly, we can have representation through the 5 county council districts. And we'll have one in north, along the county council lines, so that they will represent the county better than the ones we have now. Right now, the district that we're in starts at the north end of Lake Watkins, goes all the way up to Linden. Right? That's a very, very broad, diverse group. And the interests of the north end of Lake Watkins are very different from the issues in Everson, Sept, and Sumas.
Let me define the next question, and then, because you're answering it right now, and then we can make sure that gets answered too. Because you're delving into this, is how do you feel the district should be defined? And use the existing 3 districts and add 2 at-large commissioners, which would be the entire county, 2 commissioners.
No.
That's one opportunity. That's one option. That still hasn't been defined. go to 5 single-member districts, which is what you were just discussing, using the county council district boundaries possibly, or some other option.
There is no support on the commission for an at-large seat. The commission is, at this point, going to follow, as far as I can determine, the 5 county council district seats, and 1 representative from each one of those districts is the only fair way to do this. It can't be done at large, it can't be done any other way.
Carly,
I
go
thought
ahead.
that once, just thinking back to the meeting where this was decided, once it's approved by the voters of Whatcom County, it initiates a process where a consulting firm is gonna be brought in, all options are gonna be laid out, and the commission will have a final say on what that looks like. So, again, that's why this is such an important election, because if we all decide as voters of Whatcom County that we want 5 commissioners, this commission is gonna decide what that looks like.
And let me be clear, this commission is dedicated to 5 seats following county council lines. And the possibility exists for hiring a third party. But you look at all the work that went into establishing the 5 districts that they are now from the county, they are perfectly well vetted, and there is no reason for us to look any further than the 5 county council districts. That would be a fool's errand.
And that is a Ken Bell opinion. Seems like there is other opinions in the community of 2 at-large as being.
They just don't happen to be on the Port Commission.
That's true.
Correct.
But the community
They
does
would have
elect
to be
you.
elected to the Port Commission to advance that opinion.
The community does elect you, though, and that's what we're doing tonight. So, in regard to the 5 commissioners, we also have a missing executive director at this point. In that search, what type of person would you look for in the next executive director? Carly?
We need our executive director to be somebody that knows Whatcom County well enough to help us create this vision to move forward. We need somebody who can lead the port and develop a culture of trust. Because I think that, again, just coming back to this issue of that we've lost trust, the port is now being run in a power vacuum. We need this person to step in and help us rebuild that and repair it. I think that leadership qualities are the most important. It would be helpful if somebody had experience running other ports, but at the end of the day, I think the person that has the skills and the demeanor to motivate and activate port staff to do the best work, to bring the community in and have a seat at the table, that's the kind of leader I would like to see.
I know I've lost the crowd when I lose Gene. So the first and most important quality in my mind is integrity and heritage. Quite frankly, our job as a port commission, and our only job, is economic development. We don't have the authority to legislate. We don't have the authority to zone. We don't have the authority to put in utilities. We don't have the authority to put in infrastructure other than what we bid out. Our job is to bring jobs to the community. So I'm keenly focused on 2 things. First of all, the thing I identified during this last round was that I think the executive director job is big. And I think it's too big for 1 person. There's 2 different aspects to the port executive job. One is vision, one is outreach, one is being accessible, one is running a staff. The second one is operating a 100-person staff in a very diverse area, from an airport to a shipping terminal to ferries. I think an operations person needs to be employed. I think it's really a 2-person endeavor. I think to find the right executive director that has the type of qualities that will listen, that will look at what we do. We don't necessarily think they need to come from the port. I think the private sector can bring to the table great opportunities for economic development, run the 100-person organization. Sometimes to run a 100-person organization, you need to have, you can't be nice all the time, right? It takes a different personality, it takes a different skill set. So I think there are two different skill sets. I think it takes two different kind of people. So I would encourage an executive director to be hired to have the skill sets to run the organization, but then immediately bring up someone who can be the operations person at the board.
Carly, I was reminded by Jane that we didn't quite get your thoughts on how we would structure the new 5 commissioners, whether it would be 3 and 2 or 5. Do you have an opinion on that?
My initial thoughts are to match the county districts, but I was looking forward to getting the information from the process that will be enacted once we decide to go this route, to have more information to know what seems best. But initially, that does feel like it makes sense logistically, representation-wise.
Thank you. It's 8:10. I'm going to call it the night. We're going to do about 5-10 minutes of some neighborhood association meeting information, and I hope that Carly and Ken can spend a few minutes after the meeting. You can hopefully ask any detailed questions that I was not able to ask tonight. And this video of tonight's speaking will be online, and I'll make sure that that link is available to you and other neighbors who may not have been here this evening. So for that, I really appreciate Ken and Carly coming out tonight.